Xbox. It's a box that uses DirectX. We take it for granted nowadays just how weird this brand really is. I mean, Xbox was made and is owned by Microsoft. You know that. Xbox is a computer technology thing, and Microsoft makes computer technology things, so it adds up, right? No, wrong. It doesn't. Microsoft makes software. It's in the name even. The whole reason this company is around today is because of Windows and the Office suite and its cloud solutions. A video game console does not mesh well with this whole vibe. Xbox was initially created out of fear, Bill Gates' fear of Sony domination of the living room. This was an era where every TV was a Sony, everybody had Sony speakers and headphones and these things. But the biggest fear came from PlayStation 2 marketing hype. Marketing hype that claimed this would be a PC killer of sorts. Basically, Microsoft was scared that Sony would push Linux as the new standard operating system, an operating system that was open source and free, and if it gained enough traction, it would make people question, why did we let Microsoft own the PC market? But that didn't happen. The Xbox was born anyway as just another experiment by Microsoft. And it worked, which is weird, because almost everything that Microsoft has done beyond Windows, Office, Surface, and its Azure cloud has failed miserably. From the Zune to the Band to the Kin to Windows Mobile and Windows Phone and the Windows Store and Groove and Bing to Clippy and Bob, Microsoft has a fairly low success rate outside its comfort zone. And so the fact that out of all these wacky experiments, a game console from 2001 launched a brand that's still around today, that's just odd. Sure, there was a few roadblocks, but things were smooth until 2013. Yes, the fundamental landscape of the modern video game industry was shaped by the 2013 Xbox One reveal, because it was received very, very, very poorly, and that is uncommon for a console announcement. More casual fans despised the always online and used game restrictions, while the core base was seeing patent leaks of Kinect advertising that followed your eyes, and some pretty terrible PR campaigns. Regardless of the reasons, it was bad enough that the old head of Xbox was removed and replaced. The policies of the Xbox One were removed, but Microsoft had its own issues. See, Bill Gates has not been a part of Microsoft for a while. Steve Ballmer was in charge at this time, but he was leaving, and the company was getting a new CEO. This guy, Satya Nadella. And this is a big deal. See, Nadella wasn't a part of the old guard. I mean, he wasn't coming in as a newbie, but you gotta think, Ballmer was one of Microsoft's first employees, and there was a sort of culture there. The Xbox brand was a source of pride. It was to stick it to the competition. But when a new guy comes in with no particular feelings towards this brand and sees it stick out of the Microsoft ecosystem, well, it gets some attention. Now remember, this was 2014. The Xbox One was not selling very well, and the brand image was tarnished to a point where it was kind of a liability. So when Phil Spencer was made the new head of Xbox, replacing Don Matrick, he got a call from Nadella. The call was weird. Now, we don't know everything, considering, it's all PR talk, but from what we do know, Nadella straight up told Phil that Xbox as a brand, as a concept, doesn't fit within Microsoft. Microsoft doesn't need to make video games. Think about it. They had Windows, they had Office, and Xbox didn't really bring in money. If anything, it lost money most of the time. And Phil, the way he says it, tells Nadella that Xbox can change. If Microsoft puts its full weight and support behind the brand, it can grow into a valuable asset. After all, Microsoft had always treated Xbox as a distraction rather than a part of the company. And Nadella agrees? Okay, so yeah, this did come out of the current head of a company, and it's unlikely the conversation went exactly like this, because business doesn't work that way. When a guy tells you, hey, this brand is worthless, we should get rid of it, and you say, no, put more into it, it's not likely your boss is going to just concede. Instead, my speculation is that Phil Phil said something a little bit different. I imagine that rather than telling Nadella that Microsoft should put its weight behind Xbox, I imagine he said Xbox should put its weight behind Microsoft. Xbox could be a service, software, and not just hardware. And this makes a lot more sense to me than Microsoft putting its weight behind Xbox, because Microsoft is a lot bigger than just Xbox. Microsoft is so big that Xbox is almost irrelevant to its success in any way. If Xbox disappeared in 2014, Microsoft's stock probably wouldn't have dipped at all. Even now, gaming only makes up 7% of the total revenue the company gets, but that's revenue, not profit. Now, it's been 8 years since Phil has taken over since this conversation happened, and we've seen Microsoft put more weight into the Xbox brand, and vice versa. Studios have been acquired, but games also go on PC day one. Look no further to how far Xbox has come within Microsoft than the Windows 11 announcement, and how much time was actually devoted to gaming. But that's not all Microsoft wanted. Getting PC gaming into the mainstream is fine, but Microsoft seems to anticipate a much larger development in the gaming industry. And a lot of this comes from interviews and other details that dropped right before E3 2021. Stuff that was mostly swallowed by E3 hype and trailers. Now, some of the news was not really news at all. It was stuff we already know. Xbox is now a brand, not a box. From xCloud to the PC, it doesn't matter where you play, you're always playing the Xbox. But what caught my eye more is Microsoft's statement on how many people it wants in the Xbox ecosystem. Microsoft has stated it wants to get to 3 billion players. That's pretty optimistic. 3 billion people is more than 20 times the number of people who have ever bought the most popular game console of all time. It's more than the number of iPhones ever sold, and it would be a majority of the people currently using the internet. So 3 billion doesn't seem achievable, but it is telling of what Microsoft intends to do with the Xbox brand. Consider that the best case for any Xbox console is 80 million sales during its life cycle. So even if the Xbox Series X and S were the best-selling consoles in Xbox history, this would only account for 2.7% of that 3 billion target. As for the other 97%, well, some of them would be PC players and xCloud users. It's fair to assume that xCloud is where they have their sights. Don't get me wrong, xCloud on phone is great, but it's not accessible, and probably never will be. Some games have touch controller support, but for the most part, you're expected to have an Xbox controller. A controller that's hard to hold when you have to hold your phone at the same time, so you can buy a third-party accessory, or this thing. But I can't imagine billions of people are going to buy an Xbox controller and this thing to play Xbox games. This is a hard logistics problem to solve outside of Microsoft releasing an Xbox phone, which probably will not happen. But even if we solved all of this, we still have to worry about, well, cloud streaming. Internet speeds are bad in most places. Because of this, I don't expect xCloud to overtake Xbox users anytime soon, especially not this decade, because internet speeds just aren't there. The end goal seems to be that Xbox could just be Netflix for games, as simple as turn on your TV, select the app, and play. And yeah, they confirmed Xbox is coming to smart TVs, and it'll support your controller, and if your TV doesn't support the Xbox app, you can buy an Xbox streaming stick. An X-Block, I call it. So yeah, this might work. It just might take a lot of time and a decent amount of luck. But Microsoft has money to burn to get this project going. And if it doesn't work, and if it all falls apart, well, I guess Xbox had a better run than Microsoft Bob, right?